there was so much drama around this player after the World Cup. We focused a lot on that drama and the narrative around the player. How significant were those talks in Germany? Did people pay attention to that storyline when Gio Reyna returned from the World Cup?
I think people were shocked to hear what had happened, but it would be wrong to say that it was ever the dominant Dortmund story. There's a lot going on at Dortmund. It's not quite the soap opera that Bayern is, but it's a close second in German terms. And yeah, it made news, but most of my German colleagues who I spoke to about this, and even with the more recent news following what came out of US soccer, there was sort of a shrug of the shoulders as if to say, oh, that's just strange. You know, we've never really heard of a case like this in German football. But Gio Reyna has not been front and center in terms of a story here in Germany. So it's not like with American fans who often ask me what's happening with Reyna, why isn't he playing? You know, it's unfair. There's nobody really who's a Dortmund fan here in Germany who's saying, oh, it's very unfair on Reyna that he's not getting a game, because the fact of the matter is others have performed better. And he didn't take his chance, Seb. You know, if you look back at what happened when he was a substitute, and we covered the game in Dortmund against Augsburg when he scored that dramatic winner and then did it against Mainz. He was then handed a start against Werder Bremen. And with a big club like Dortmund, you do have to capitalise on your opportunities. And he got very low marks for that start and hasn't been back, you know, as a starter. He has featured as a substitute a couple of times recently, but I think he's fallen down the pecking order a bit. And the bad news for him is that many of the players who've been injured for Dortmund are expected back, if not this weekend, then in the very near future. But, you know, my view on this, and it's just my view, you know, I don't know if you and Herc agree, my view is that as a young footballer, you do have to earn your stripes and you have to go through periods of adversity. You don't just get a game for a team like Dortmund because you're there. You know, Gio Reyna is a good, talented player, but there are other really good, talented players who represent his competition. And I hope that in the grand scheme of things, this proves to be a learning experience for him.
It's interesting. You point that out, and I'm looking here at Dortmund's lineup, and the guys that play his position, I mean, they're just incredibly deep there. Is there any sense, and I think he's got a contract through 2025, is there any sense that maybe Dortmund isn't the place for Gio Reyna anymore? Like, if I'm thinking about it from a fan perspective, I've heard a lot about Gio Reyna's talent. I want to start to see it. I'd love to see him score 20, 30 goals in the Eredivisie, as opposed to seeing him not just not play, but really be buried right now, it feels like, at Dortmund.
I think the difficulty for him is, and again, this is just my opinion, his best position is central rather than wide. Now, there is competition in the central area. There's also competition in the wider positions. And, you know, you have younger players coming through younger than Reyna, somebody like Jamie Bino-Gittens, who's actually been preferred to Reyna in some of the matches recently. You have Julian Brandt, who's absolutely been on fire, playing perhaps the best football of his career before his injury. You have Karim Adeyemi, one of the best young German players, who's also been injured, but perhaps with a chance to come back. And you have Marco Reus, the club captain, legend, whose contract is up. We wondered if perhaps this might be his last season in Dortmund, but what I'm hearing is probably not. He's probably going to remain with the club. So this is going to be an ongoing challenge for Gio Reyna. And that's why I said earlier, you know, you do have to really have that killer instinct as a starter when you get the start. And against Werder Bremen, he was so disappointing. I know American fans don't like hearing that, you know, because and sometimes I feel as though they're blaming me for relaying that message. But I try to be honest, and I have been honest about Reyna. When he's played well, I've said he's played brilliantly. When he hasn't, then I think it's fair to make that point as well. And the fact of the matter is he's down the list right now.
Yeah, I follow you on Twitter, Derek. I see some of the comments that come your way. All part of a day's work, I guess, when you're dealing with USMNT Twitter specifically.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.